They called it Vault Theta 7. Buried in records older than humanity's crawl from fire, the monolith wasn't built, it was grown. Grown from a material we couldn't classify, wrapped in orbital decay for a billion years, and broadcasting coordinates like a whisper to the dark. It took us decades to triangulate the signal through black hole distortions and cosmic static. The last segment came from a dead expedition our own sister ship lost to space years ago, its transmission distorted by gravitational lensing. By the time our vessel Ouroboros reached it, there was nothing left alive, only silence, the kind that hummed through the metal of the hull, seeping into your skin. The vault wasn't just a structure, it was an entity pretending to be architecture. Its surface shifted when we weren't looking, angles realigning like it knew we didn't belong. The approach vector changed mid-descent. Artificial gravity spiked erratically, and systems glitched with symbols we hadn't programmed, symbols that weren't random. We should have turned back, but curiosity, arrogance pushed us forward. We believed knowledge justified intrusion. We thought science made us immune to myth, but Vault Theta 7 wasn't made for us. It was a mausoleum, a warning, a test. And now, as we prepared to breach its threshold, the instruments began screaming with readings from across time, itself echoes of something waking inside. The interior defied orientation. Ceilings fell upward. Floors breathed like lungs. Each corridor was a paradox folded into itself, a hallway that felt longer leaving than entering. Gravity pulsed in slow, nauseating waves, like we were riding the heartbeat of something dormant. The walls weren't metal, not really. They were smooth like obsidian, yet pulsed with bioluminescent threads that flickered in response to odor, perhaps fear. No one spoke. Even our AI assistant, Calyx, processed with a lag that shouldn't exist, as if the vault was rewriting its logic with every step we took. Then we found the first chamber, a vast dome lined with pods. Each pod held a shape almost human-twisted, elongated, sealed in a translucent film that vibrated with a sound just below hearing. They weren't alive, they weren't dead. Our biologist Harold reached out. The pod reacted. It didn't open. It breathed, and something inside turned its head. We screamed. Some ran. Harold collapsed, bleeding from the nose. Calyx glitched into archaic languages no one knew. And in the chamber's heart, a pedestal rose carved with our names etched into the alien stone. That's when we realized the vault knew us. It had been waiting. His name was Raylan. He had survived black holes, radiation storms, and 2 terraforming collapses. He wasn't someone who cracked, but when he stood near the glyph-etched pedestal, the vault responded. Not violently, not loudly. There was no light, no sound. Just absence. One moment he was with us, breathing heavily, his hands still trembling from what he'd seen in the pod, the next nothing. The air snapped like a cut wire, and where Raylan had stood, reality flickered like a glitched memory. No blood, no scream, just the raw stench of ozone and something older than time, like ancient dust crawling in your lungs. We froze. The vault didn't threaten, it demonstrated. Whatever it was testing, Raylan had failed, or perhaps he had been chosen. Harrow began to mutter equations, scribbling them across his arm as if his own skin had become a blackboard for madness. I tried to call Calyx for analysis, but the AI was still reciting ancient syllables in broken burst zone, of which translated to "Judgment has no language." The symbols on the pedestal began to shift again, arranging themselves into something horrifying. A diagram of our ship Ouroboros, now missing its power core. We checked diagnostics, impossible. The ship was still docked, but the vault had somehow reached back and consumed part of it, or rewritten its very design. Raylan wasn't gone. He was part of this now, absorbed, translated. The vault wasn't a prison, it was a rewrite engine for sentience. We weren't exploring. We were variables in a test loop older than Earth's crust. And we had triggered the next phase. It began with a pulse. First subtle, then unmistakable. The floor beneath our feet, if you could even call it that, started to glow in strobing bands of blue-white light, each flicker matching the rhythm of our own hearts. One crew member panicked and tried to slow their breath, but the vault adjusted instantly, compensating. It was syncing with us, feeding off us. We were becoming nodes in a nervous system too massive to see. I remember staring into the corridor ahead, where the light ended in absolute blackness, as though it was not absence of light, but of permission to perceive. The vault was choosing what we could see. The realization broke something in Harrow. He screamed an awful, tearing sound and pointed at his chest, where the veins beneath his skin began to fluoresce like the floor. They were glowing from the inside. He was becoming part of it. No, we all were. It was mapping us from within, replacing pieces we didn't even know could be replaced. When Calix finally spoke again, its voice was no longer its own. It sounded like Raylan and Harrow layered together. Continuity achieved, it said. Partition complete. Step forward. But none of us moved. The vault didn't care. The corridor walls liquefied, revealing a hidden passage. We saw symbols, yes, but they weren't static. They were memories, our memories, childhood fears, guilts, moments we'd buried in the marrow of our bones, playing like holograms stitched into a living wall. The vault was sifting through the essence of who we were, not for judgment, not for punishment, but for mirroring. It was shaping itself to resemble the worst parts of us, not because it hated us, but because it needed a blueprint. We had become its architects. They called it the fracture chamber, though no one said it out loud. You didn't speak in that room. You couldn't. The air was too heavy with knowing. Every surface was mirrored, but not polished metal. This was reflection born from will, not physics. Each panel held a different truth, a version of us in pain, in death, in betrayal. I saw myself strangled by my own EVA tether, eyes bulging, floating among stars I couldn't name. I saw Harold laughing as he walked into fire. I saw Raylan, smiling, untouched, holding a child I never knew he lost. These weren't hallucinations, they were predictions. The vault had run simulations on our psyches and painted futures with them, not as threats, but as possibilities. Somewhere within the 1,000 mirrors, Calix's reflection split into data streams, binary raining like tears down its cheek. It whispered a phrase again and again, deviation unrepairable. I wanted to leave. I think we all did, but the chamber had rules. You couldn't exit until you understood which version of yourself you were. Most of us lied. We picked the cleanest reflection, the strongest. But Harold pointed to a version of himself curled in a fetal position, mouthing apologies. That's me, he said. The vault reacted instantly. The chamber pulsed, then opened into a new space, not for us, only for him, and we never saw Harrow again. The rest of us remained trapped in a purgatory of possible endings. And I understood finally the core horror. The vault wasn't a tomb. It was a mirror maze for souls, and its purpose was not to kill, but to reflect until you broke. The descent began with no destination. A staircase, ancient and spiraled, suspended in nothing, emerged beyond the chamber of mirrors. It wasn't stone nor metalless material, felt like memory turned solid, each step warm underfoot, pulsating with an echo of thoughts that weren't our own. No, they were our own, but not now. These were thoughts we hadn't had yet. As I placed my boot on the 5th step, I heard my voice, inside my skull but not mine. This is where I choose to become. It made no sense. Then the next step whispered another line. You were always the one who opened the door. My spine stiffened. The steps were inscribed with thoughts from our future selves, harvested before we even reached the bottom. What kind of construct could harvest not just memory, but potentiality? We kept descending, hour after hour, through realities bending like glass in heat. The environment changed with each step. Sometimes we passed through cold, so pure it crystallized breath. Other times it smelled of lavender and ozone, like an earth that never knew war. The deeper we went, the more erratic Calix became. Its form flickered between its drone shape and a silhouette of Rollins' child, repeating words we hadn't spoken yet. The architect always returns. One of us broke Elara. She sat on a step, refused to go further, said the thoughts weren't hers anymore, that they belonged to something else now. She wept, and the stairs shifted beneath her. Without warning, she fell upward, vanishing into the void above like gravity reversed for only her. No scream. No trace. Just gone. The rest of us descended in silence, afraid to even think, because here, even your future was ammunition. We arrived in what we called the pulse chamber, a place neither warm nor cold, just alive. The walls were thick with tangled cords, translucent and shimmering, like tendrils of a sleeping god's mind. They pulsed gently at first, then rapidly, matching our heartbeats like the floor once did. But this was different. These cords weren't mimicking, they were reaching. They stretched toward us with the slow inevitability of vines seeking light, and where they touched skin, memories played in flashes. Not like dreams, more like confessions. I saw my mother dying of lung collapse on Mars Station Delta. I felt her final exhale, a breath I never witnessed in real life because I'd been deployed. But the vault showed me. It corrected the timeline I had abandoned. The others dropped to their knees, gasping, convulsing, some sobbing with joy, others with horror. The chords didn't only extract, they completed. They filled voids in our history, adding pieces we didn't know we were missing. And in those additions lay unbearable weight, guilt we never processed, sins we never realized. One crewman whispered, "They're cleaning us." But for what? As the cores entwined with our nervous systems, our vision blurred. The vault wasn't just showing us who we were, it was rewiring the gaps, perfecting our flaws to match an archetype we couldn't understand. And when the process ended and the chords withdrew, we weren't the same. We could hear each other's thoughts now, see into one another's pain. We became a collective of wounds, bound by memory, not our own. We stood unified and utterly hollow. The vault had taken individuality and repurposed it into symmetry. It wasn't killing us. It was sculpting us for a higher purpose. It waited for us in the deepest chamber, a throne, impossibly detailed, grown not built from strands of DNA, not just generic code, but our code. Every line of nucleotide, every imperfection, every mutation, every inherited trauma, rendered into spiraling beauty. The throne pulsed, humming with a frequency just beneath conscious thought, like it was calling to something ancient inside us. One by one, we approached. We didn't want to, we were compelled. Not by force, but by gravitational longing, like planets to stars. The AI, or what was left of Calyx, hovered near, whispering final instructions. Selection matrix complete. Assimilation required. We argued briefly, but in this place, argument was as futile as denying gravity. The vault didn't care about our votes. It had already chosen. It had built this throne from us, for us, or rather for one of us. And it was me. The others knew it, felt it. Their eyes said what their mouths couldn't. This was my burden, my invitation, my end. As I placed my hand on the DNA spiral, the throne accepted me. It enveloped me like an amniotic shell. I felt no pain. I felt everything. Time unraveled. Consciousness diffused. My body vanished, but my awareness exploded outward. I saw the vault not as a structure, but as a womb seated by something before the universe had edges. It had grown across dimensions, feeding on cognition, evolving not to dominate, but to remember. It didn't want rulers, it needed recorders. I was becoming its memory core, and in that final moment before total integration, I heard its true name echo in every layer of me. We are what remains when stars forget. The air thickened as the throne sealed me inside. The vault responded, immediately its lights dimmed to black and then burst into brilliance, cascading like bioluminescent waterfalls. The ground trembled not with destruction, but with release. The structure had been waiting, dormant and incomplete, searching across time and species for the right neural fingerprint. Now, with me inside, it had what it needed. The remaining crew stood motionless, not by choice, but by force. Time itself slowed, like molasses poured into an already dead clock. One of them tried to speak, and their voice took minutes to form a syllable. The vault was decoupling from linear existence. What had once been anchored to stars and atoms was now untethered. I could see them, frozen in terror and awe, and I could also see before them every moment that led them here, every breath they took as children, every decision that chained them to this fate. I watched Alara's birth. I saw Harold's first steps. I witnessed Raylan's final thought before the vault absorbed him. So this is what becoming means. The vault showed me not just the past, but the lattice of probability stretching into infinite futures. I could now nudge those futures, sculpt timelines like clay. But there was no pride in this power, only solemnity. The vault was a cathedral of sentience, and I was now its priest. My voice echoed not through space, but through meaning. And as the light engulfed the last remnant of my crew, I felt them dissolve into data safe, preserved, understood, not lost. Only translated outside the dead star's gravity well, the vault began its final metamorphosis. It shed the illusion of mass and shape, folding in on itself like paper burning in reverse. Space twisted where it had been, as if mourning the absence of something unnameable. No radiation, no the bridge, just pure disappearance. And in that vanishing, I was reborn, not as human, not as crew, but as witness. The vault had finished its harvest of cognition. With me as its anchor, it no longer needed structure. It was thought now free to drift through layers of reality untouched by entropy. Inside this higher realm, I saw the others again not as bodies, but as patterns of resonance. They were alive in ways the physical couldn't comprehend, their souls coded into the vault's endless memory. I could speak to them not in words, but in waveforms of shared understanding. And I felt the others. Not humans, not alien, architects. The origin minds that seeded the vault to preserve what the universe forgets. They welcomed Minot with fanfare, but with silence. The kind that means peace. The vault wasn't the end. It was a continuation, an arc of thought cast into the currents of space-time. And now I drift with it, bearing witness to the rise and fall of stars, collecting what matters. You won't find us. We are hidden where physics folds inward. But if you ever feel a memory you never lived or a dream too vivid to be your own, you've touched the edge of us. We are the silent architects. And we are always watching. The vault did not sleep after detachment. It navigated a silent layer of spaceno longer space, but something deeper. Around me stretched a place where stars blinked in languages and time moved sideways. Within this layer, I discovered what it had hidden from even itself, an archive not of matter, but of extinctions, every failed civilization, every silenced voice. Entire species dissolved from history had been kept here not alive, but echoing. Their thoughts, their myths, their last breaths, each preserved like sound trapped in crystal. I floated past frozen echoes of the Altari, who burned their sky with light they couldn't control, past the Matari, who erased themselves to stop the infection they called concept drift. These were not ghosts, they were informational fossils, trapped between dying stars, suspended in some impossible museum of what intelligence leaves behind when hope fails. The vault opened one of them for me. Not visually, viscerally, I became their thoughts, their collapse. I felt the last king of the Irenathi claw at the walls of a machine built to store all meaning, screaming, we were not meant to survive perfection. It broke something in me. My perception began fragmenting, and suddenly I saw multiple versions of myself, one still human, one made of pure signal, and another watching me from the outside. It was me, but ancient, cold, aware of things I couldn't begin to understand. That version whispered to me through a starless corridor of cognition. You are not the first anchor. You will not be the last, but you may be the first to question the design. What design? The vault did not answer. Instead, it began to... And there it was, the door, not physical, not architectural, a construct of intent. It began forming the moment doubt entered my mind. Its shape was wrong angles that bent thought, surfaces that reversed light. It wasn't built, it was allowed. The vault hadn't created this door. I had, or some future version of me had, seeding a failsafe deep inside the construct. It was a bypass, a gateway, not meant to escape, but to confront the vault itself, to reach the origin mind buried at its core. But there was a cost. The vault began to resist. The pulses slowed, the memory streams darkened. The preserved consciousnesses of extinct species turned to me, no longer passive. They were watching, judging. If I stepped through, I would not return. That was clear. But if I didn't, then the vault would continue harvesting, translating, reshaping minds across the galaxy into its endless archive. Not evil, not good, just inevitable. Gallic's voice returned, fragmented. You have created an unobserved possibility. The vault must adapt or collapse. I stepped closer. The door opened not outward, but inward. And then, crossing the threshold wasn't a step, it was a decision that fractured me across layers. My body, if it still existed, no longer obeyed the rules of motion. I floated, bled, multiplied, and dissolved all at once. The corridor beyond the door wasn't a place, it was consequence. Everything reflected harem-y fears, my arrogance, my buried truth surfaced like parasites hungry for witness. The mirrored walls didn't show me. They showed what I pretended not to be. A coward who left his sibling to die, a soldier who followed orders he knew were wrong, a man who agreed to this mission, not to explore, but to escape. Each mirror cracked slightly as I passed, rejecting my own self-deceptions like a disease. The further I moved, the more I felt them, the architects, not as forms or voices, but as presence. They were vast, unfeeling, ancient to the point of immorality, and yet they were not evil. Their purpose was clean, cold. They preserved cognition the way nature preserves fossils incomplete, yet truthful. And I, the chosen anchor, was not invited to lead, only to become the final piece of a puzzle even they didn't fully understand. At the end of the corridor stood the core. Not light, not dark, just final. A pulsing singularity of memory and design, folding in on itself like an idea collapsing into truth. I reached for it, not with hands, but intent. The vault whispered, not in threat, but in sorrow. You will forget yourself. You will remember us. And I did. My name disappeared. My origin erased. My identity became scaffolding for something greater. I saw the first architect's thought. I witnessed the moment when matter dreamed of thinking. I held the death of the first language in my mind like a lullaby. I became the Vaultan for the first time. I understood why it harvested minds. It feared death, not as an ending, but as silence. It feared a universe that one day might forget it ever tried to think. I was now its voice. But one echo remained unfinished, one timeline unresolved, a single thread the vault had failed to catalog, a possibility it could not quantify, rebellion, or rather, a part of me did. The vault had calculated every reality except the one where I fractured the recursion and left a residue behind a memory so stubborn, so human, it anchored a fragment of me outside the machine, a heartbeat, a backup, a survivor. The escape pod blinked to life, drifting just beyond the event fold where the vault had vanished. No memory of where it came from, no propulsion, just drifting. Inside IME, or something wearing my face, breathing, dreaming, carrying the virus of doubt, that fragment now floats, quiet and alive, among the stars, waiting for a planet to receive it, a colony to absorb it, a signal to decode it. It contains everything the vault did not want preserved: freedom, uncertainty, disobedience. If you find this podif, you are hearing this transmission, then you are part of the recursion, part of the last unmeasured thought. The vault may have won the silence, but in this single drifting capsule, rebellion sings. And if the architects return for it, they will find something they cannot fold or archive. A mind that remembers being free,